Welcome to Programming Fundamentals from the Ground Up. Today we're going to learn about loops and breakpoints. Now, a loop is basically a block of code that you want to run repeatedly until a certain condition is met. There are a few different types of loops. Today we're going to look at two of the most common, while loops and for loops. So first we're going to look at while loops. And a while loop actually kind of looks like the if statements from our previous lesson. And it'll have a condition, so it'll be like while, and then we put our condition here. And then after that, there's the block that will get run. And the thing about a while loop is it might actually run 0 times. Like if we just put like while false, and then we put, console.log inside the while loop. If we run this, it's actually just never actually going to hit the for loop because like this condition is just never actually going to be true. And this little, it says it's an unreachable code. We're going to run it here. And so we have nothing in our debug console because this condition is just never true. Now, something we can do is say we have like var a equals 0 and then like var b equals 5. And then let's say we'll do while a is less than b. Okay, so it is, right? 0 is less than 5. We're going to increment a. You would expect this to run when it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Because each time it's going to print this statement and then it'll increment a. And then, so the first time it's going to say like 0 is less than 5, then it's going to be like 1 is less than 5, all the way up until it's like 5. When they're both 5, this will not get executed. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so like the way this debug console is showing, it says this is the number of times this is printed. It's not going to just print like inside the while loop every single time. Let's actually do console.log a, because that's probably going to be a little bit more interesting. Yeah, so we got 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you're dealing with while loops, it's possible to get stuck in an infinite loop. And how this will happen is if the condition is true, so you end up entering the loop, and then it just never really gets outside of the loop because it's like the condition is just going to keep being true no matter how many times you run it. When I was preparing to make this lesson, I tried out like running an infinite loop just to see like how it would go. And like my computer, like it just like sucked up all the memory. So it actually crashed. It's just like something you really should be careful about. Like you will run into this at some point if you keep programming. But I'm just going to go ahead and show a different way. I'm going to show you breakpoints and debugging. We're going to go ahead and we're going to change this to decrement a. It's going to start, it's like a is 0, so it's less than 5. Then it's going to go to -1, -2, -3. And it's like, it's never going to be bigger than b if it keeps subtracting here. So what we can do is if you put your mouse here in the gutter, and this is pretty common for a lot of different IDEs if you're not using Visual Studio Code, we're going to just click here with the little red dot, and this is going to add a breakpoint. And what happens is if you run your code normally, it'll just be ignored. But if you run your code while you're debugging, it will stop at the breakpoint. And while you're at the breakpoint, you can just take a look at like what the values of all the different variables are. And then if you have like a breakpoint further down, you can just like click to go forward, like, and you can just see what the problem is. Because a lot of times you'll have a program that's like very complicated and there's so many different variables and it's difficult to know like what's actually causing the problem and like what's actually going on. And like you won't be able to tell just from the output, like a view, like if you're working on like a web page, like the web page will look messed up, but like you'll have no idea what's actually going on behind the scenes. So breakpoints are like a very powerful tool. One of the most important tools really for debugging an application that's not working correctly. So we've added our little breakpoint here on line 7. So what's going to happen is if we run this with debugging, it will hit line 7 and then it will stop. And then hopefully we'll be able to see what A and B are and, be able to correct the problem. So if we go in here, it's like run with debug. And like this bug icon is now becoming pretty universal. Like I've seen this in many different IDEs. Like I've seen this in like IntelliJ, I've seen this in Eclipse. So whatever IDE you are, just look for this little bug. And then we're going to click it. And we're going to run and debug. JavaScript code, it really did take a long time for this to run. I think like the behind the scenes with the debugging, like it probably took me about 45 seconds for this to build and run. But, you know, that's fine. Like it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run if you're able to use these breakpoints and debug properly. So we've hit our breakpoint here, and you see we got this little like yellow arrow. It's pointing here, and it's like this is our breakpoint. And we can look at the side here, and it's like it's showing all of our variables. It's showing all of our variables, and it says like A is 0, as we would expect, and B is 5, as we would expect. We can be like, okay, let's see what's going on here. So if we click this, it's actually a continue button that will just run until it hits the next breakpoint. So we'll run this, and you know it printed out -1. So it's like we already know what the problem is going to be, but I'm just showing this as an example. But it's like now A is -1, so it's just going to keep getting smaller and smaller, and it's just never actually going to get to the value of B. So we'll just keep running this a few more times. So it's like 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's just never going to happen. So once you realize like what's happening and you're in this infinite loop, you don't have to just like keep pressing this forever. You can actually just hit this this little stop, and then it will remove the debugger, and you can just go back to coding and you can fix this. So we'll do that. I'm going to actually remove the breakpoint, and then we'll do ++. It's good practice to remove breakpoints when you have actually fixed the problem. Next time you go to debugging, it's like you don't want to like hit like 20 old breakpoints that are just like things that you fixed in the past. So just something to remember. And when you are debugging, a lot of times you can just uncheck that breakpoint. So like the next time you do it, you won't actually hit it. So that is while loops. Next up, we're going to talk about a for loop. And a for loop is it's structured a little bit different from a while loop. What happens is you declare a variable that is your index variable, and then you say the condition that the index variable needs to be for the loop to exit, and then what's going to happen to the index variable at the end of every loop. In practice, it's just every time it's going to increment, and you just run the loop that many times. So we'll say for, and then we'll say var I. This is very, very common, naming your index variable I. That's just like a common notation. And if there's like nested for loops, usually it'll be like I is the outermost one, then it's J is like inner, and then K if you have 3. In general, you shouldn't be nesting 3 loops. You should figure out a better way to do it, but sometimes you have to. So I equals 0. And then we're going to say I is less than maybe 10, and then we're going to increment I. So we get into our for loop, and it's going to say I is 0, so it's going to make this new variable I, and then as long as I is less than 10, we're going to go through the loop, and at the end of every single time, we're going to increment I. So once I is 10 at the end of the loop, it's like we're going to just go past this loop and continue with our code. Now you might be thinking, is it actually possible to do this in a while loop? And the answer is yes, you definitely can. A lot of times when you're programming, there's more than one ways to solve a problem. So here we have our for loop, and let's just do console.log I. We have a for loop, and we're going to just run through this, and every single time we're going to print out what I is. So we're going to go ahead and run. And here we go. 0 through 9. One thing you should note is a lot of times you're going to want to start at 0. There's a lot of like structures in programming that start at 0. You'll notice I actually started my series with episode 0. So this is just convention. But like for our purpose, we could actually start this at 1 here. And, it would be just fine. And it's just going to print 1 the first time instead of 0. Now it's time to try out a little practice problem to see if you got down what loops are. The problem is to print the sum of the first 100 positive numbers. Now, you could go and say like var a equals 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and you could do that. You could totally do that. But there's a better way, and you probably want to use a loop. So go ahead, if you're following along with this video, just pause it for now and try to come up with a way to print the sum of the first 100 positive numbers. Okay, I hope you had a chance to try this problem out on your own. So we're going to use a for loop here. So we're going to say for, and we're going to say var I equals 1. I is less than or equal to 100. And then we're going to say plus I. Now, we're also going to have a total here. So we're going to say var total equals 0. And each time we're going to just add what I is to total. And then at the end, we're going to just console.log total. So we're going to say total equals total plus I. And let's go ahead and run this. And we got 50-50. So the answer here is 50-50. And if you did this a different way, like if you did a while loop, but you still got the right answer, congratulations. You understand how loops work. Loops are a very important part of programming. And if you can understand this, you're well on your way to being able to write all sorts of different programs. So thank you, and I hope I see you in the next lesson.